Welcome back to .NET Rocks. This is Carl Franklin.
And this is Richard Campbell.
And it's currently just after 6 p.m. here, so that's officially wine o'clock.
There you go. I'm still drinking tea, but it's only 3 here.
But that's pandemic time.
Hey, it's pandemic time.
Yeah, I won't have an excuse pretty soon. Pretty soon, just because I like wine.
An excuse? I don't think we needed an excuse.
You know, it used to be Scotch time, but that got really expensive.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Oh, well. Scott Hunter is here. We're talking about Build 2021 and all sorts of good stuff coming down the pike. But before that, let's get started with a little thing we call Better Know a Framework.
Awesome.
All
right, man. What do you got?
You know, I've been watching Top Chef reruns, right?
Okay.
And Tom Colicchio, when he's at the judges table, he always seems like he needs to do this little philosophizing. You know, chefs, life is funny. And so that's become like the thing that we pick on
Right.
for. You know, chefs. Anyway, so, you know, sometimes you have an application where you're on the back end doing way more reads than you are writes. And I'm talking
Right.
about frequency. You might be updating your data once a week, once a day, and usually it's one person, maybe two persons. There are a lot of things like that. And, you know, one application comes to mind, Richard. You know what it is?
Which one?
Podcasts.
No. Okay.
Right.
Mhm.
Yeah, because, okay, we have podcasts, right? We have podcast data. We go into our little admin and we add things to it, and that goes off to a SQL server. And then there's a lot of reads off of that SQL server.
Yeah, mini reads.
Very inefficient, especially if you don't do caching. If you do caching, okay.
Well, and it's also not changing, right? If you're reading the same thing over and over again.
That's right.
You only put out
Yeah.
a show a week.
Right. So basically what I've come up with is a Blazor Train episode that is coming out. Well, it's already come out now, but I'll give you the link. If you go to 1741.pwop.me, that'll take you to a YouTube episode of Blazor Train in which I talk about a back-end manager for
Mhm.
API that writes and reads to and from blob storage, Azure
Nice.
Blob Storage. Right. And so the key is that we only write once in a while, but there is a possibility that you and I might actually be writing the same file at the same time, however remote. So what I use is a Semaphore Slim. All right. So this is a .NET thing. And,
Right.
you know, this could now officially be called a Better Know framework because
Actually
a
references the framework.
yeah, a Semaphore Slim is a asynchronous way that you can allow in a singleton object only one client to call that at a time. And so
Nice.
you do like await semaphore slim dot wait async, and then you have your block of code and you release it by doing semaphore slim dot release. So it's a really easy way to wrap all the save code that we do in you know, in a protective barrier so that only
Nice.
one user can access it at a time. So with that, and the fact that, you know, blob storage is so damn cheap,
Yeah.
and I can essentially put a 1 hour or even a 5 minute or a, you know, 5 hour, 10 hour, whatever it is, sort of wait time in there.
Mhm.
And so anytime somebody goes to do a read, I'll check the last access time. And if it's time, you know, to load up, then I go read it. So just with a combination of that sort of caching and the fact that you're using blob storage, it's perfect for podcasts. So
Yeah.
so this episode sort of talks through the mechanism from everything from the back end, the API, the manager, the controllers, and then on the client, an API, and it's all based on the repository pattern. An API repository all uses generics, so you can create your own managers for different things, and it's pretty good. This is going to become an open source project,
Nice.
and including the podcast administrator. It's all
Okay.
going open source, and it's all Blazor. All Blazor all the time. That's what I say.
Nice.
So I think it's good. It's not the ideal architecture for everything, obviously.
Yeah. Depends on the volatility of the data.
Yeah,
how often does it change?
And how often does it change? How often does? But you tried the prototype, and what did you say? It was stinky fast.
Stinky fast, yes.
Yeah.
I think I may have used a somewhat more firm word than that.
Right.
But yeah, stinky fast.
Right. And that means there's going to be a new .NET Rocks .com website that is all going to use these static files. And yeah, we're looking forward to it. So it's a new feature, and I plan to share it all on GitHub.
Nice.
So, yep, that's it. That's what I got. Who's talking to us today, Richard?
Grabbed a comment off of show 1719 from December of 2020, where we talked to one Scott Hunter about .NET 5, back when that was a thing. I was thinking we'd talk about .NET 2, but no, we're going to talk about .NET 6. But once we talked about .NET 5, we've been talking too much. Anyway, and Steve-O has this comment, only a few months old, because it's only from December. He says, great show as always. Thanks, Carl and Richard. I have a question for Scott. I'm trying to convince my boss to use Blazor instead of React for our next project.
Why would you do that?
I don't know. I don't know what he's thinking. I think Blazor is a perfect candidate for this project, which is a rich client for schools and students. But my boss thinks Blazor is too new and not ready and too experimental, and it would be harder to find new employees.
Yeah, that .NET Core is really hard.
Just hiring Blazor people, right? So clearly Steve-O's getting ready to be fired or quit. I don't know the answer to that.
One or the other.
I was wondering if you have some sort of materials or list of customers which would help me convince my boss. I've tried, but I'm not quite ready to give up the battle yet. I know you're all super busy, but I'd really appreciate the help. Thanks. And he says, thanks, Steph. So maybe he's not Steve-O, but his name is Steve-O. But we'll lie against him. But you've done a bunch of projects, Carl, and I'm sure Scott's seen a ton of them.
We've just shipped, or by now we have just shipped our first in production for a customer Blazor Server application. Blazor Server turned out to be the right solution for them because they only have a few thousand customers, and it was easy to scale and easy to develop, and yeah.
But you're not worried about having to deal with millions of users where the load on the back end would be a big deal.
No, and even if we were, there are solutions to that.
Sure.
So yeah, I can't say enough good things about Blazor. And here is a really good testimonial for Blazor. Mark Rendell was doing a talk online, and I went and sat in on it. And at the end of it, he said, Blazor, here's the thing. I was never on the Blazor bandwagon because it was so new and all that stuff. And it sounded, quite frankly, too good to be true. And now that I've played with it, I think it's absolutely fantastic. It's solid. It's awesome. And a guy like Mark Rendell, who is highly, highly critical of just about everything he doesn't write himself. Yeah. If a guy like him says this is good stuff and I would use it, then that's a good testimonial.
That's pretty cool. Well, there you go, Steve-O. Thank you so much for your comment, and a copy of News to Go By is on its way to you. And if you'd like a copy of News to Go By, write a comment on the website at .netrocks.com or on the Facebooks. We publish every show there. And if you should comment there and I read it on the show, we'll send you a copy of News to Go By.
And definitely follow us on Twitter. I'm at Carl Franklin. He's at Rich Campbell. Send us a tweet, but use Twitter 2.0, not 1.1, because 2.0.
We like better. The twos. Twos are better.
All right, that's a private joke. Before we start, Scott said, "What are we talking about? .NET 2?" So, and it's Scott Hunter. He's here. He's the director of program management on the .NET team at Microsoft. His team builds .NET Framework, .NET Core, ASP.NET, Entity Framework, and the managed languages, web and .NET tooling. To us, he's Scott. To you, he's Mr. .NET. Scott Hunter. It's going great.
All's well.
This is coming out during Build.
Yes, crazy week at Build. Exciting week at Build. Lots of software, lots of new software, lots of new .NET.
Yeah.
There's more .NET?
There's always more .NET, Richard. There's a .NET every November.
That is true. And it's an interesting point you bring up, which is this sort of, if you ship to schedule, then you kind of slip features if you're going to stick to the schedule. So, which also makes it very challenging to do really big features. Like, I'm impressed with what you pulled off with Maui so far, but that's a lot. Like, getting it done by November, like, I'm holding out hope, but boy, oh boy.
And we haven't really even seen it yet.
A lot of features like the Maui stuff is stuff that we actually don't. We started the Maui stuff last year.
Right. So it's a secret that you didn't build it in a year. It's been going on for a while.
No, it's been going on for a while. So there's many things. A lot of the language features that we do take more than a year as well.
Yeah.
We did announce with .NET 6 that we now ship a new C# every year. So C# is now joined the same schedule that .NET has, and so C# 10 will be part of the release in November. But I can tell you that there's lots of C# features that I would love to go have in the platform already, and the team just tells me they need more time. So
right,
it takes a bit of time. You can't use all the new C# language features in LINQ today that we've added over the years, and that's because the expression tree tech inside of .NET needs to be updated for those new features, and that's something we'll do in .NET 7. Is we'll enable all the new language things. For all the LINQ stuff. And of course, we're not committed to that, and I just said it on air. So,
but that said,
just committed himself to that.
That said, Scott, LINQ is pretty darn powerful right now. I mean, you do have to.
Yeah, there's a crazy LINQ thing. I'll tell you a story about LINQ that I will shock both of you.
Okay.
So if I asked you a question in .NET, data access, ADO.NET.
Mm-hmm.
The Stack Exchange has their lightweight framework called Dapper.
Yep.
And we have EF Core. Which of those is the fastest? How would you stack rank that?
Yeah, I'm kind of thinking ADO.NET being sort of the smallest, oldest, it should be stinky fast.
Yep. And then after that, which Dapper or EF Core?
Oof.
EF Core doesn't sound fast, right? Because it's so high level. But I'm going to go out on a limb, Mr. Hunter, and say that EF Core is faster than both of those things. Am I right?
So EF Core is going to come in. So obviously ADO.NET is the lowest level thing, as Richard said. It's going to always be the fastest because it's your bare metal. You don't have
right.
You don't even have to make objects if you don't want to. You can just pass a bunch of text around. But with EF Core in .NET 6, it will basically match the performance of Dapper.
Wow,
I'm shocked.
And so that is it's literally 70% faster between .NET 5 and .NET 6.
That is amazing.
31% faster query performance and 43% reduced memory allocations.
Wow.
Now, is this re-engineering by the Entity Framework team? Like, what is the responsibility for the speed increase?
Just optimizations.
So the teams just worked on making existing features better.
Yeah, we got to a point where they were able to go and do a bunch of crazy optimizations on EF Core, the same way that we've done them on ASP.NET and various other parts of the .NET stack over the year. But it just means EF Core is super fast. And
well, and imagine an upgrade to an existing application that gets a performance boost just by recompiling on the new stack.
That's one of the crazy things that we started seeing this last year is we've been seeing a lot of customers that said they would only do LTS releases jump onto .NET 5.
Interesting.
And that's because there's enough of these types of improvements that they can see, and it pulls them forward to the next version of the framework faster than they expected. And they're like, I was on the phone with some big banks recently, and they're you would think of a bank of anybody being somebody who's like, well, I'm going to stay on the long-term support.
Well, LTS at a minimum, like, hey, 4.8 works for me. Heck, what am I talking about? 4.1 works for me. They're very conservative.
The reason I use EF is that it's just so easy to use as a developer, and that I don't have to write all that goo and that, code that I used to.
So that's a cool .NET 6 thing that you probably wouldn't expect. Have we ever talked about the upgrade assistant on .NET Rocks?
I don't think so.
I don't believe so.
So I think that's a great part of the story too. Is as we think of .NET Core and then .NET 5 and then .NET 6 after it, a lot of questions come to be with like if you have an older application and you want to move it forward, and we think now is the time if you're actively working on applications, you should think about moving them forward to the new bits. We've obviously got a team inside of Microsoft that helps a lot of our large customers move, including internal customers that run big big services inside of Azure and stuff like that.
That are sticking around on the sort of standard version of .NET. They're still sitting at 4.8.
Yeah.
Okay.
But they're moving. Of course, our team that helped some of these internal teams move and some of the external customers move, they kind of built their own tool over the years as they've done this, which we've now made available to everybody.
Wow.
And it's pretty slick. It's a command line tool. You can run it on a solution. It supports multiple projects. And it does a bunch of stuff. It'll upgrade your project files to the right format. It'll go and look at references that you have and make sure that you're referencing the right thing for, .NET 5 Plus. It'll fix NuGet references as well. And then it also has the ability to go and do a bunch of code fixes. Over the years of us, porting some of these applications, you do the same thing over and over and over again. And those are built into the tool. So it will go fix those things for you as well. So I want to be very clear. This is not a tool you're going to run and you have a guaranteed, runnable .NET 5 project out of it. But it will take a lot of the tedium out of stuff. It backs everything up. So it's easy to revert back. But it's something people should try. And
what's the minimum .NET version that it will support?
I think it goes all the way back to the beginning of time.
So any .NET application, Microsoft.NET, .NET Core, whatever, it will upgrade it to .NET 5.
It will try to help you migrate it to .NET 5.
So it's a try convert.
The one thing it doesn't really have good support for today is it doesn't have great support for ASP.NET Web Forms.
Yeah.
That is something that we are looking at trying to do in the future as well, is adding some more support for that. But it's pretty good for doing MVC, web APIs, desktop applications, WinForms.
Wow.
Console applications, class libraries. And it'll take a lot of the tedium out of it. We had a command line tool called TryConvert, and this tool actually uses TryConvert to do the project files that we did for project files last year. And this kind of takes it to the next step where it can do more than just one project file. It can do a whole solution. And so, if you're out there and you've not tried .NET 5 and you want to try moving one of your applications, it's aka.ms/.net-upgrade-assistant.
Nice.
That will take you to the page. It's in beta, and we plan to RTM it with .NET 6 in November.
So I could take a WinForms app from Studio 2010 and take it over to the new form of WinForms. Like you and I talked about this ages ago about you couldn't do a pixel perfect conversion from the old style WinForms to the new WinForms that was able to tolerate high DPI screens and so forth. But this is not doing a conversion. This is a migration. Yeah. So you got to go do some checking, right? Like things are going to be different.
And we've taken a bunch of old apps. We took Scott Hanselman's Baby Smash, WPF app. We took that one. It takes you, after you run this tool, it takes about 3 or 4 minutes to fix whatever's left. You just have to compile it. You just have to comment stuff out till it compiles. We have a cool demo that we show at Build called Voids, and we're showing one of my favorite .NET 6 features, and it's Hot Reload. And it's a graphical program that draws a bunch. It's like the game of life in .NET, and it was like a 6-7-year-old .NET project. It just converted completely.
Wow.
And it's one of the demos that we used. And but trying to help everybody, and that's why those tools exist.
You're also doing a try convert for Xamarin Forms to Maui conversion for .NET 6. I know it's a little premature to talk about that, but you must know a little bit more about that since the last time we talked to somebody at Microsoft about it.
Yeah, this is the tool that we'll put that support into. So we'll have the Xamarin team put some of the support in to the Upgrade Assistant tool, so you can run the Upgrade Assistant on an existing Xamarin Forms project, which obviously is going to use the old project files and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And this will try to clean up as much stuff as we can. Obviously, in this case, because we changed namespaces, the big thing you want this tool to do is to go through all your files and fix all your namespaces, because that'll make it the easiest to migrate your stuff.
Plus all those custom converters and things that you guys are leaving Xamarin behind in Xamarin Forms, those need to be totally rewritten, right? So I can imagine like somebody who's got third-party tools or a community-based Xamarin Forms tool wants to convert their stuff to be a Maui tool, a Maui component, and they've got shaders and stuff like this. That's a tall order, man.
Yeah. I'm putting my enterprise architect hat on, right? Where I've got a group of .NET devs that I may have had, come and go over the past 20 years. I have this body of internal applications. The idea that I could take a couple of keeners, who are terrified at the prospect of trying to maintain those old applications, go take this upgrade assistant and start doing a survey. Just take, let's give an order to the most important apps that we think would really benefit from an upgrade, and work our way down the list and see if we got any low hanging fruit. What just comes across, and what needs an hour's worth of work, and what goes, oh, wait a second. You're going to have to think about this one, right? Maybe we'll shuffle that one over to the Power Platform guys. But, but what if, and I've worked with organizations where literally 1,000 old apps, in various states of disrepair, to have a couple of folks spend a week working down that list and see how many just come across onto the new platform, and all those security risks go away. All of that maintainability stuff goes away. Like, that could be a huge win.
Well, to me, the big one is it's not tied to the .NET on the machine anymore, which means no longer are you taking a risk of a Patch Tuesday written your application. To me, that's always been one of the premises of .NET Core and then .NET 5 Plus afterwards, was disconnecting you from the operating system so you control your own destiny. And so then you go to your bosses and say, hey, I want to use all the newest features. And guess what? We don't have to put anything on the machines to do that.
Yeah, doesn't break anything.
And whatever doesn't come over, you rewrite and React because it's stable.
I was going Power Platform. I thought Power Platform was funnier, but okay.
That's a callback to the comment, my friends.
There you go.
Yes, 24 minutes of comedy right there.
That's a really powerful thing to think in terms of. It's just like, if you're in an organization who's just not interested in running the latest and greatest, because they don't see the benefit. Yeah. To reduce the cost.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's a new reason to think about it as well, which is it's kind of it'd be my favorite feature. I have two favorite features. One is the unification of the platform in .NET 6, but the other one, at the end of .NET 5, we were asking ourselves, well, what are we good at? And we're good at perf. We're good at cross-platform.
Yeah.
Where do we really not do well against our competitors? And in many cases, as Carl said a few times, things like React, some JavaScript stuff is kind of one of our competitors.
Mm-hmm.
What's the day in the life of building a React app versus building a .NET app? And the big thing that comes to mind to me, especially as you talk about Blazor, I know Carl's done a lot of Blazor work.
Oh yeah.
Make a change in your Blazor app and see how long it takes to refresh your screen to see that happen in your application. It takes way too long. I was doing a demo before build. It was in the .NET 6 Preview 3 bits, where I literally can show that you make a change in the Blazor app and it takes 5 to 6 seconds to see the actual refresh on the screen. With the tech we're doing in .NET 6, it takes 1/10 of a second.
That's great.
Amazing.
And so it's instantaneous. And it's kind of an evolution that it can continue.
Yeah.
But it goes further. It's also using some of the tech that Hot Reload that the Xamarin folks had built into some of their tech. And it uses kind of a mix of all that stuff. We got it dialed in before build to such a point that you don't have to save your code anymore. You can basically push a button and we can apply the change to your running application before you even save the file. Now, I will caveat, obviously you can't change everything. If you change something that ripples through the entire application, this is not going to happen. But I know in the case of, I'm looking at Carl here, even though nobody else can see him, and you're just trying to adjust some UI.
Right.
You're not changing the world. You're just tweaking some pixels or changing some colors or moving some styles or stuff like that.
You're not removing a typo, like all of these little things that I don't want to recompile for.
and they're instantaneous in .NET 6. So to me, it closes the biggest gap we have. We call this inside of Microsoft, we call this the process of writing some code, running it, looking at the result, changing it again. We call that inner loop. You know, how long does it take to do that inner loop circle? And the goal in .NET 6 is to get that inner loop circle below 1 second. And I can tell you the tech that I've seen so far, it is well below 1 second. And the cool thing is it works everywhere. It works on ASP.NET. It works on WinForms. It works on WPF. It works on Xamarin, which is now .NET MAUI. But no matter what type of app you've got, this tech's going to work. And imagine you're the customer on .NET Framework 4.8, and you're maintaining your application, and it takes you 6 seconds every time you make a change. Well, move it to .NET 6. It'll take less than 1 second per change, and count the number of 6 seconds you do a day, and see what you're going to save your boss.
Hey, it used to be an excuse to go refresh my coffee, but it's getting faster and faster and faster. One question out of the blue for you is there. Are you guys thinking about SEO with Blazor? I mean, it's very hard with any kind of dynamically generated UI to get the attention of the Googles and the Bings. But is there anything that is happening on that front?
I don't think we have anything that I'm aware of that we're doing in 6.0 for that. That is an area we have talked about in the past, and there are techniques for doing that.
Yeah, there are.
We just haven't got to that in Blazor for .NET 6. If I run through some of the big Blazor things in .NET 6, and some of them are pretty dang cool, and you'll appreciate this, Carl, for sure, is now we have support of ahead of time compile for Blazor.
Yeah.
For folks that don't know that, Blazor, for the most part, there's a .NET interpreter that's running in the browser under WebAssembly, and it's interpreting the IL for the WebAssembly or the .NET and running it. Now you can decide and tell us what parts of the app you want to make native. So if you're doing, math or some kind of fast transition in the web, in the browser that you want to do, you can mark those parts of code as areas that we want to AOT ahead of time compile for you. We don't do the whole thing because it would make the app bigger. So we don't want to do that. Another cool thing in Blazor and 6 is smaller download size. So if you're doing the WebAssembly tech, you'll see smaller sizes, across the board.
Yeah.
Very cool
significant.
I can't tell you why we're doing it, but it's still cool. There's a bunch of tech at Microsoft called Fluent UI.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of one of the web frameworks or one of the UI frameworks that a lot of the Microsoft products are built with. And we're going to make sure that you have access to the Fluent UI tech from Blazor. So if you want to make a Fluent looking application, you'll be able to do that inside of Blazor. But then
now that's more than just fonts and
it's actually
icons.
Controls. At the end of the day, it ends up being some controls are in there as well.
Yeah.
And I grabbed the link to it for the show notes here, and right away it's like, hey, web, Windows, iOS, Android, Mac OS, like this is not just a Windows tool either.
Yeah. So that's a cool thing that kind of came in from a side project we're doing. But to me, the coolest feature that we've done in .NET 6 for Blazor is going to be desktop support.
Yes.
Meaning that you can basically build a Blazor desktop application. So we're all aware of Electron. If you run VS Code, if you run Spotify, Dropbox, Slack. Who knows how many other Electron apps are out there? These are web apps that appear to be desktop apps. Mm-hmm. We want to give you that feature for Blazor, and so you can now take your Blazor app, wrap it up as a Mac app or a Windows app, and you might ask, well, why? Well, if you're a web app, you only have access to whatever the web sandbox gives you access to.
Right.
If you're a desktop app, you have access to everything on the machine. That's pros and cons, but if you're building internal apps, that access probably is fine. So it gives you the ability to build web apps that work well across multiple devices that have full access to the platform. And so one of the cool demos that we did at Build is we had a Blazor desktop application, and it showed up with a tray icon on a Windows machine. If you right-clicked on its icon, you got the right-click menu in the taskbar. And it had the ability to send notifications to the notification center in Windows 10. And so not only can you build these web apps, you can give them platform light up. And it's pretty crazy because we built a Maui version of it as well.
Yeah.
And if I showed you both the apps side by side, you couldn't tell the difference.
Wow.
So
cool.
This is the Blazor WebView thing that came out in Preview 3, right?
What it is it's a Maui app, a .NET Maui app that hosts a new control. It's a Blazor control. So we basically add a Blazor WebView to the XAML. And so you basically build a Maui app with just the Blazor WebView inside of it. And from that, you host your Blazor app in there. You can put native controls in as well if you wanted to. If you want to put native controls on top or below it.
Okay. So it's not an embedded browser, which is what the approach that we've taken with Windows Forms and VB before that, taking like a version of IE and plunking it in there. It's not that, right? We give you the APIs. If you wanted to do something like that, you could. So we give you the hosting API. If you wanted to go build a native host or a super slim host that didn't bring the Maui runtime with it, you could do that as well. So we put the hooks in for that, but we're primarily focusing on some of those Electron scenarios, which for us is Windows and Mac to start with. Right.
There's no reason we can't bring it to Android and iOS as well.
I'm trying to figure out if you're running WebAssembly in there, or you don't need to. You're just running .NET Framework.
No, we don't run WebAssembly.
You don't need to.
There's no reason to run WebAssembly because the Blazor desktop server or the Blazor server is in process with the app. And so it's actually a Blazor server app with the actual back end of the app in process. So it's blazingly fast.
Wow.
And it has full access to whatever you want to give it access to. So it's if you watch the build demos, you'll see apps that do all this native light up.
You've really followed the Silverlight path, right? You find now it's Silverlight out of the browser. It's just this Blazor out of the browser.
But the difference is, it's awesome.
It is awesome.
That is the difference.
And gentlemen, I need to interrupt for one moment for this very important message.
Are you under increasing pressure to ship code faster than ever before? Then it's time to work smarter with Raygun's modern approach to error and performance monitoring. Raygun gives you instant visibility into the health of your software. And what makes it so unique is that it not only tells you when something's gone wrong, it shows you exactly where it's gone wrong and how to fix it, right down to the line of code. Made by developers for developers, Raygun has built a suite of monitoring tools that are used and loved by thousands of software teams every day. Monitor every corner of your tech stack with widespread language support and native integrations with GitHub, Jira, Slack, Bitbucket, Octopus Deploy, and more for even greater visibility. Visit raygun.com to resolve issues faster and to deliver flawless digital experiences for your users. That's raygun.com to get started on your free 14-day trial with plans starting from as little as $4 per month. Hey, Carl here. You know, when you're starting up in the tech world, having all your options open makes a big difference. So why let a cloud partner limit how you can grow? Oracle for Startups provides stable, scalable cloud infrastructure with multi-cloud flexibility, so you can build your technology any way you choose. And at 70% off for 2 years, there's nothing holding you back. Grow your way with cloud that won't lock you in. Check it out at www.oracle.com/go-to/netrocks.
And we're back. It's .NET Rocks. I'm Richard Campbell. That's Carl Franklin.
Hey,
we're talking to our friend Scott Hunter about .NET 2.
Actually, it is .NET 2 in some ways. There was the first wave of .NET, and then this is the second.
Yeah, well, because .NET 5 in some ways was the new .NET 1.
Yes,
you know, we really the unification, everybody together. There's one .NET. Although it wasn't feature complete. Like there were certain folks in certain places in 4.8 where it was going to be tough to move to 5. I think it seems to me that 6 is going to be even easier.
It is, but we're not bringing any of the old stuff back anymore. So
what made it to 5 is what's going to make it. Web forms not coming. WCF not coming.
Right.
Like that's reality.
There is an open source WCF that is out there.
Well, they're trying.
And people at Microsoft work on it and maintain it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, once again, I can't tell you where we use it at, but we use that thing inside of Microsoft for some big services that run behind the cloud.
Oh, interesting.
So I have one more question, and that is the Blazor WebView. Is that different from the tech that will allow us to build native Maui apps with the Blazor syntax rather than using XAML for UI, which I guess is like the upgraded version of the Blazor mobile bindings, right?
Yeah. So the tech in Blazor Desktop is still XAML based.
Okay.
The tech you're talking about where you can actually build the UI in C#.
Yeah.
There's a project that James Clancy and my team works on called Comet. And that's where you can go find some of that syntax. That's something that we would love to bring into .NET MAUI in the future.
Yeah, I don't mean that. I mean using the HTML in the Blazor UI.
I don't know. So we don't know what to do with that right now. So we don't there's Comet, which lets you build all your UI in C#.
Yeah.
Then there's the mobile bindings, which lets you build all your content in in Blazor syntax.
Right.
And it's gonna end up being people voting with their feet to figure out where we go with that, because I don't know which one. What I don't want to do is say, hey, we have Blazor or we have Maui, and you can do it in web. You can do it in C#. You can do it in XAML. We know that every time we offer too many choices, it confuses people. And so, I have to offer XAML for compatibility with the past.
Right.
But I have to decide, or we as a team have to decide, which of the other ones is the right one to bring forward. And I don't think we know at this point. Part of the team loves the C# one. Part of the team loves the web one. I don't know. Or maybe we make them as, never actually in the box, but they're just supported packages that, can light up a different experience.
You can go get.
So that I at least have one more Blazor train to make comparing all those things when .NET 6 comes out. So go ahead with the next thing.
Other announcements from Build.
Yeah.
So we've talked about, the inner loop. We've talked about Blazor Desktop. I think we have to talk about Maui.
Yes.
Because to me, it's the end of a unification journey that we started a long time ago. We acquired Xamarin, I think, in 2016.
You did?
If I'm correct.
You're correct.
And so we're 5 years into that story, and we've always wanted to make the Xamarin Tech, feel like it's a really first-class citizen in .NET. And so .NET MAUI is basically the next evolution of Xamarin Forms. It is, uses the same project system that we have for all of the other .NET 5, 6 projects. It now uses the same BCL. So it uses the same, in .NET 5, we made Blazor WebAssembly use the .NET Core BCL. And with this wave, the .NET MAUI Tech will use the same BCL. And so it is really unified because it's the same project system. It's using the same BCL. It's an evolution of the Xamarin Forms Tech. I'm very happy about it. We're trying to do some other things there as well. Anybody who builds a Xamarin project today knows you end up with a solution with a whole bunch of CS projects inside of it, one for each of the platforms. We're trying to collapse all that into a single project. So you write just one app in one self-contained space for all the platforms. You're going to see in at the build time frame, we haven't got all the way there. We have everything but WinUI into that mode. And our hope is before we actually get to November and RTM, we can actually collapse it all the way down. But that is something we should also talk about. This is something new about .NET MAUI. Xamarin really only was supported on iOS and Android. .NET MAUI is supported on iOS, Android, Mac, and Windows.
Right.
So we support all the platforms, and which is a nice thing, and I think it's a big part of the platform. Really, you can write an app once, and it runs everywhere, and it uses whatever the tech is the best tech on the platform. So if you're running on Windows, it's actually going to be a WinUI app using that's the Windows team's newest UI library.
Interesting.
It's going to be using what's called Project Reunion. I know they have a new name for that, but I don't think they've announced it yet, so I'm not going to go there. And Project Reunion is a way to build a Windows app that uses all the new APIs that works on down-level versions of Windows 10. And so it'll be able to use if you want to use the newest Bluetooth stack, you can use it on current Windows 10. And it goes all the way back to the old Windows 10s. And so that's .NET MAUI is a big piece of the build announcement, and the final big piece of the Windows announcement, something we've been calling ASP.NET Minimal APIs. And you folks have been around for a long time, and you know kind of our journey. We built this amazing controller-based way of building APIs in .NET that's been matured over many years. I think we shipped the first version of that around 2012, so it's 8-9 years old now. But when you start looking at our tech and you compare it to like Express on Node, we look way more complicated.
Right.
More ceremony.
We want to make sure that there is a path for simple APIs and a path to upgrade those to full controller-based APIs. And so we've actually put a whole bunch of features in C# to make this awesome. So there's what's the first thing you see in a .NET project? You see the program class, and you see a main method. Well, in C# 9, we got rid of those with top-level programs. You don't have to have those anymore. But then the next thing you see is a wall of usings. And so we have a new feature in C# 10 called global usings. Which lets you get rid of that.
Like underscore imports Razor in Blazor.
Yep.
Place to put all your using statements.
True. For the same reason.
Yeah.
And so you literally can build a ASP.NET core web API in 3 lines of code now. You can build, one of the demos I did at Build was I took it was a weather API that we had built a long time ago, and we had a Node Express version of it, we had a controller-based version of it, and we had a minimal API version of it. We built a lot of C# features to get rid of a bunch of casting and stuff like that, to make beautiful small APIs in .NET that are very performant. Once again, you can always add all the tech back. But if you're just building 2 APIs in an app, you probably want to use this tech. If you're building 1,000 APIs, you should probably use the controller app technology. But that's another piece of Build as well. It's the continuing simplification of C# or .NET programs with new C# language features to get right to your code, less ceremony. But minimal APIs is a big thing. Blazor Desktop, .NET MAUI, Interloop. Those are the big staples of the release.
Hey, Scott, our friend Steve Smith has an open source project. I think we talked about on the show last year about sort of minimal web API endpoints. Is this adjacent to that or somehow involved in that? I don't know.
Maybe was it his project, or was he using endpoint routing, which is something that we did show in .NET 5?
Maybe he might have been using endpoint routing. But it's just interesting to see. The name was so coincidental. It's like, didn't we do this? Because we are looking at often these libraries when they were initially built, there was many options added that didn't really get used. And so I like this sort of movement towards sort of minimal stripping away of ceremony and making all that stuff lighter.
It's a big thing that we see. We just see, it's like, I hate it when somebody goes and compares .NET to, Express, and they go, well,
right.
You just look so much more complicated. And I'm like, no, we just give you, we kind of came the other way around. We came from mega APIs,
right,
and didn't think about how do you write small .NET apps. And now we're going to show both sides of this and show that you can be very successful writing small .NET apps, and you can be very successful writing huge .NET apps. That's the cool part of the platform, is we support, the entire spectrum back and forth.
Well, and when ASP.NET Web API came along, like, it was touted as this is the lightweight choice compared to WCF and like all of these other strategies. Now we're looking at going, wow, that's a lot of ceremony.
The circles that we go in computer science are just funny. How we because you're right. I remember we had a whole team called the Simplicity team back then, and we thought we had really simplified everything down with ASP.NET Web API. It was so much cleaner and easier to write than WCF. And then you look at this and you're like, wow, you simplified it again.
Turns out it could be even simpler.
But but I do want to be clear. This is not a replacement for ASP.NET Core Web API. That is still a super important piece of technology, and it has its place. And it depends on what you're building. You're building a to-do app, not very complicated. This is great tech. You're building a single API, great tech. And then there's a ton of other, crazy things inside of .NET 6 as well. Some of the, like we have support for the, we have support for ARM across the board on Windows. So you can build WinForms and WPF apps in ARM.
Right.
So full ARM 64 support in Windows. We've added ARM support for the Macs as well. So you can do M1 chip on the Mac. Other crazy small things. We have single exes. This is something I so wanted us to get in .NET 5, but it slipped at the last minute. Was single exes, where we basically take your app and all the parts of .NET you use and make them into a single executable.
So you don't require
reasonable size,
another
reasonable
installation.
size. Well, even more reasonable in .NET 6 because we now compress the executable, which means you can get a WinForm app in like 25 meg.
Wow.
Yeah.
So
in the earliest days of .NET, I remember having to tell our customers to go out and download the .NET framework or whatever, and figuring out how to bootstrap it, and then it would download and stuff. And it just seemed like a good idea to just put the .NET framework right in the installation of Windows. And why didn't you guys do that? And then I sort of learned how Microsoft works on the inside, and the Windows team and the .NET team not necessarily having lunch together all the time. So it's really nice to be able to just package everything up. And I'm talking about the old days, right? It's a new Microsoft now.
Yeah, I mean, there's pros and cons each way. I mean, it was Windows itself depends on the .NET framework, and so the .NET framework became a part of Windows because a lot of the tech that you use inside of Windows, if you're using the IS Manager, many of those tools are all built on .NET, and so it makes sense that we then put .NET in the operating system. But there is a cost for having .NET in an operating system that's on billions of machines.
No, sure. Yeah.
Which we learned.
And I remember, was it 2000? It was 2006. We did a show about Salamander.
Yeah, that's right.
Right. And it not only, it was an obfuscator back when we cared about that.
Well, that was one of their
but
products.
It also had this compiler,
It was a
right? That it would compile you into an exe. But because you took the whole framework with you, like the app wasn't small.
Yep. It was huge, in fact.
Yeah.
And that that's our goal. Our long-term goal is to get to a point where every version we have a linker. For folks that don't know what the linker is, if you drill into the publish settings on any app in .NET, you can actually get to a place where you can click and say trim out the parts of .NET that you don't use. And every release that gets a little better.
It's on by default, isn't it?
It's not on by default.
No,
I don't think it's on by default.
Okay.
But every release, we make that tech better and better. We have ways of now annotating .NET to tell it when something is linker friendly or not linker friendly. ASP.NET Core has gotten way more linker friendly over the last couple of releases, and so that is a long-term goal too, is to let you build really small single executables for .NET as well.
Yeah. Okay.
But it's a journey, and we know it will take us, versions and versions to get there. We just take a piece each time.
Yep.
Right. But I do like this idea that you can make new versions without adding a lot of new features. Just make stuff go faster too, right?
Yeah.
Like that optimization is a worthwhile benefit. And at the same time, get folks onto the new bits and the current security models. And, there's a very compelling argument to say, hey, your existing apps will be faster.
I said, we see big customers seeing this and picking up new versions faster and faster. I mean, you folks are really aware that people stayed on old versions of .NET Framework forever and forever, and I'm glad that we're adding enough value that people see a reason to move. And we also want to make it easier and easier to move. That was one of the other tenets of .NET 6 that we don't really talk about a lot. Was it should not take you more than 10 minutes to move a .NET 5 app to a .NET 6 app.
Yeah.
We still want to have the ability to break things if we need to. But we are trying hard to make it as easy as possible to migrate from version to version, because we want all of our customers to be on the latest release. That helps us, and it helps the platform, and hopefully it helps the customers.
You guys are doing some work also to move towards supporting HTTP 3, right?
Yep. So HTTP 3 support will likely be in .NET 6. But I need to be very clear about that. HTTP 3 is not a ratified spec at this point.
It's a moving target.
So it's a moving target. But the reason that we're actually even experimenting with it and having it available as a preview is because we want to show our customers that we are looking at the latest standards and making sure that .NET, if you're using .NET, you don't have to wait 2 years to be on HTTP3. When
Right.
HTTP3 ships and it ratifies, we want to be there very fast.
Well, to be fair to HTTP2, like the second version of anything is really, really hard. Right? There was a lot of battle.
Yeah.
It's not that you guys were slow to adopt it. It wasn't ready for adoption either. There were problems.
True.
But, going 1 to 2 is harder than going 2 to 3.
2, there's still parts of Azure that don't support full HTTP2 at this point. And so there's challenges there. And obviously, gRPC, which is built into .NET 5 and 6 and so on. It depends on HTTP2. That's the protocol that it uses for some of its stuff. And so, that makes sure that we're actually testing and working on all.
Okay, so what did I accomplish this morning for the past 50 minutes? Basically, like refining my operations for inventory and for inventory cases and rental cases. So basically making the rental system or the inventory system sync with the rental system so that they're hand in hand. And when you rent something, your inventory system is updated with the state of various items. And that there's sometimes you can't rent what you would like to rent. And so that's what I added. That's the test that I added. Now, I mean, remind you that I'm not really doing like correct verifications. I'm just doing like TDD, in which I'm visually checking the database to make sure it looks the way that I expect it to look. I'm not actually adding a verification in which I literally query the database for entries that I expect to be there or not be there. So I'll admit that. Can I do it? Sure, I could do it. It'll just probably take another couple hours for me to add that for all the tests that should have it. And I think the test should have it. Right now, it's just not a high priority because right now it's working, right? So that's a disclaimer. Oh, my masterminds is at 7:30. That's an hour and I can't do the math. 18 minutes. And I still have these tickets, this ticket module to test. And I don't really expect that to take me a long time. I'm expecting, knock on wood, but I'm expecting that to probably take me an hour to get those tests running. Specifically these tests right here. So those are my expectations, man. Hold on, there's some other ticket tests right here. Tickets in progress, tickets assigned, tickets closed. What's the difference between? Oh, because these are actions. Okay. Regardless, I feel like this stuff. I'm just. Okay. I mean, the way I organized it is kind of different, but I understand why. I understand the motivation behind me organizing it this way, so I'm not going to trip. Yeah, I'm taking a break, man. I'm gonna go to the beach. All right, we're out. See ya.